Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais with another episode of the Yakking Show. This is the show that brings you actionable tips and ideas for you to improve your business and your life. And we do that by bringing you interesting guests. Today is no exception. But let's introduce co-host Kathleen first. Hi, Kathleen. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Peter. The sun is shining and I'm loving it. And thank you also very much for tuning into our show. And as Peter mentioned, we do have another special guest with us. We have the great pleasure of welcoming Valerie Trapunsky to the show. Hello, Valerie. How are you?
Hi, very good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, Valerie is the founder and CEO of ChatterBoss. This is a company that provides outsourced assistance in practically all aspects of business. So let's jump right in. Valerie, can you please tell us how much time does the average entrepreneur spend on routine administrative tasks that could easily be outsourced to save them time?
Oh, it's a great question. You're like diving in like straight
Yes.
to the meat of it, right? There is a statistic that says that entrepreneurs spend anywhere from 30 to 60% of their work week bogged down with administrative tasks. So this is nearly 24 hours a week for some, for others, it's more. And if we look at the year, that's 1,200 hours, potentially more, that we are spending in our business on administrative tasks. The administrative items are born the moment that we give birth to our business idea, right? So there's like no way to hide from it. It happens. And so either we are the assistant or we get an assistant to support with them.
Wow, that's huge. And I can believe it when I look at how much time I spend, and we've been streamlining a lot. I've got to ask you, first of all, where did you get the name Chatterbox from? I love that name. It's intriguing. How did you come up with that?
Yeah, I thank you for asking me. In the 7 years, very few people ask about the origin of like a weird name, and ChatterBoss is kind of a weird name, right? So it's interesting. When I was starting out, I started my career as a personal assistant and a chief of staff. And to be honest, I at that moment didn't know what is my zone of genius. And we can actually talk about zone of genius. I'm sure it comes up a lot. I didn't know what was my zone of genius. So I thought that I will create a technology software like ChatterBoss that would be like a project management platform. And then I started to test the platform on assistants because that's what I knew what to do. Well, then I realized I don't know how to do technology, but I know the assistant world. Like I can live and breathe the assistant function. And so, we are still very technology heavy, but we are mainly human centric. And so it was also an evolution.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. And I just have a curious mind, and that's why I had to ask you about the name of that. I think it's great.
Yeah, it is great. ChatterBoss.
I'm certainly not going to forget that name for sure. So Valerie, if somebody that's suddenly wakes up, an entrepreneur or small business owner, and he suddenly realizes he or she is spending, as you said, 30 to 60% of their time, and they think we better outsource, and they come to you, what's the first set of tasks that they should be looking at to outsource?
So when entrepreneurs come and they get started with an assistant, part of our model, which makes us unique, is that we also provide delegation coaching, and we really ask you all of the questions in order to set you up for success. And so this question, Peter, is a really good one because there is a certain system for delegating your first one or two projects. So I am of the opinion that your one or first two projects, they have to be clear and measurable. They have to be something that have a clear start and end date. And the end date is soon. It's something that you can quickly get done so that our brain releases dopamine and we feel like, yes, this is good. Or we get information based on this lower priority task. Let's say, oh, something went wrong. Let me figure it out. Was it my communication? Was it their understanding? Was it something else entirely? And we guide and coach entrepreneurs on that so that they're very clear and they can trust their choice. But your first few projects, even if you might have a lot on your plate and it feels very urgent, I really urge you to start slow with something that can be done in a few days or in a week.
Right. So, for instance, if I came to you and said, I need someone to reorganize my whole database of all the guests we've had on the show and all the emails, and it's just a mess, and I need someone to do that, and I need it done in a week. That's the
Yeah.
sort of project you can start off with, right?
Well, I would actually say that's kind of complex, right? So it's not complex to delegate. This is the right thing to delegate to an assistant. But for a first one, like if you're saying it's a mess, right? Okay, then what's so there's like within that project is like 10 small projects. And that's what I mean. You want to start with
Okay.
I'll give you an example. My first task, which was like really, it was important to me, but it was very easy when I started with my new assistant, is look at my calendar when I am traveling. Let people know, because I have when I travel, I forget to tell people that I'm gone, and then they show up for a meeting and I'm not there. I'm like, can you do that? Right. So easy for me to say, right? She'll ask me questions. Are there certain meetings you want to move? Right. So there's okay for that back and forth. And it's easy for me to check. I can take a look. It's in the next 3 months. So, and we can have a back and forth and just start the foundation of our relationship. Then you can move on to those more complex projects.
Okay. No, that's good. Good explanation. Excellent. Thank you.
So
Kathleen.
Just to be clear, then Valerie, the novel approach that you provide is you sort of break down the project into tasks and help coach the employer about that. Is that, did I get that right?
Yeah. So what we do, well, we just guide entrepreneurs in general on their delegation. We have a ton of tools. We've created a delegation self-assessment. We have a communication scorecard. So we pull out, we're like Mary Poppins, you're like, you're having a problem or you don't know what to do. Here's my bag of tricks of things that we can do to support you. So when you're looking at your first few, yes, absolutely. You want to break down larger projects, but it depends on the level of the assistant. Our assistant, they are expert assistants. You don't have to break down the projects for them. So you can absolutely give them these high level complex projects. I only mean at the onset, when you're starting the relationship, give something small so that you can test your communication and their comprehension, and that you are together going to be the right fit. I like to say that it's like if you give too many things, or if you give something too complex, it's like you're cooking 5 different meals on 5 different stoves. And if one of them or 2 of them don't end up tasting good, like what went wrong? Which was the ingredient? You can't untangle it at that point.
Sure.
So
okay,
each company has different types of softwares they use. I mean, every company is really managed differently. So with the people that you outsource to, does the employer have to come in to train them on those specific softwares? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one, we always want to meet the entrepreneur where they are at. So we have over 200 contract assistants within our network. And so what we do is we learn what is their character, what's their personality, what's their skill set, what software do they know? And we ask you, what software do you need? And then we try to do the best pairing. Now, with that said, sometimes you may have a software that's very unique, sometimes very industry specific things. Lawyers use something specific, people in the construction field, sometimes they use a very specific CRM. In those cases, we would say, look, maybe we don't have an assistant with that software, but they have something adjacent. And so they can probably figure it out. But yes, there is a little bit of that training curve if you're using something that's less standard, right?
That makes sense.
Okay. Something that worries me, purely out of interest, though, with a business like yours, where you're dealing with clients on one side and outsourcing assistants on the other, how do you stop your customers or your clients poaching your best talent of assistants? And I presumably you have contracts and all that, but we've heard stories of how sometimes people get burned by their clients poaching their assistants or their service providers. Are you well protected against that?
So it's a really good question, also a question that no one asked me on a podcast before. So I love to have the opportunity to answer it, because it's something that I thought about in the beginning. I still think a lot about, right? Because you see people leaving off platform in all these different organizations. And so that's very common. So when I started ChatterBoss, I wanted to see what kind of a model can I create to prevent that. Well, one, yes, of course, we have the contracts, right? Assistants sign a contract, clients sign a contract. But I always like to say to clients when they're worried about things like this, a contract is a contract, and people will, at the end of the day, if they want to do something malicious or bad, right, they will. And then my belief is, one, the entrepreneurial world is so small, what I found. So I found very few people do that. Has it happened? Yes. And you know what? We've found out, and it's embarrassing, right? Like, we know each other, we know each other's contacts, like, and it ends up being that way because we support each other. So one, it's just like that. I think it's the level of the integrity of the entrepreneurs in our community, is the level of integrity of our assistants. And then we always really push ourselves to provide value on both sides, right? So for entrepreneurs, you don't just get one assistant, you get multiple assistants, right? So there is a benefit to stay within ChatterBoss because you constantly are adding and removing team members. And we do the delegation coaching for the assistants as well. There's the protection, there's backup, there's support, there's assistant success. I appreciate this question because really, like, we're obsessed with making sure that we provide value on both sides all the time.
No, good answer, and a good way to look at it. Thank you for that, Valerie. Yeah, Kathleen, back to you.
So Valerie, you were previously an assistant to A-list celebrities and CEOs. How did you make the transition into starting your own business? And then is there anything along the journey in building your business you would have done differently?
Yeah, I mean, right? Like, hindsight is always 20/20, of course.
Sure.
But the truth is, I would say no, right? In terms of like doing something different, I wouldn't, because I am where I am. And so it's a beautiful place to be. It's such a nice culture we've built. It's such a nice group of entrepreneurs and assistants. It's really my dream, to be living and being inside of this company. But my journey was that, yes, I was an assistant. I was an assistant for a while. I felt like I reached that like top echelon of the industry, but also, and this really informed the way that I lead, and it informed the business that I created. I also felt a lot of the time that I was a big fraud working as an assistant, because, and now, I have language for it. We look at personality, we look at character, and, I have characteristics that make it very hard for me to be organized. It makes it very hard for me to follow details. I am more of a creative person. I'm more of a flexible person. So as an assistant, I was amazing, the best there ever was at situations that required, like, on the spot, something to happen without planning. Like, if my boss said, I want to land this plane in this country where we have nothing, like, I am the woman for the job, right? Like, I thrive in chaos. But if you tell me to plan something over a period of 6 months, for me, I would get so bored, right? And I struggled because a lot of that role required that. And so I actually started ChatterBoss out of a need to be able to get support with, I wanted to leverage what I learned, but I no longer wanted to be in a position where, like, I'm doing things that are just very hard for me.
Oh, fabulous.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, I share some of the same characteristics. I think I'm terminally unemployable at any
Yes,
conventional type of job. So somebody approaches you and are thinking about using your services. And they've never used an assistant before, either virtual or in real life. What's the biggest challenge you have to overcome to get them to see the benefit and sign up and start using your services?
I think that for us, we work really well for people that are already primed for the support. So either they've had some failure, or they really see the benefit of getting that support, right? I find it, when people still haven't come to that decision that they're going to give up doing these things, It's like you can't make someone quit smoking. You can't
That's right.
make someone lose weight. But once they've come to you to solve the problem, yes, we're the right, people to
Okay.
solve it, and we'll tell you all of the tools. But that's why I also spend a lot of time outside of, the sales aspect. I spend my time on educating entrepreneurs. And I know that some of the entrepreneurs, for example, that are hearing this today, they're not ready. It still is going to take them time, but this conversation is going to plant a seed. And then maybe 6
Sure.
months or a year from now, it will bloom.
Right. Right. Now you touched
We certainly hope so.
Yes, you touched on this earlier, but can you give us a little bit more details as to the services you provide? And please tell us about your podcast too.
Yes. So the services that we provide, really, I like to say that the assistant function doesn't have templates. Really, you have such a variety of things that you can get help with for an assistant. Your assistant just becomes an extension of you, your right hand. And so it's a lot about who you are, how you communicate, your industry, how you've set up your systems. And so the kind of the general things, right? Email management is very popular because we drown in our email, then we don't respond. We use email incorrectly. We use it like a project management system, and it's not. We'll do project management. We'll work with vendors. We'll find vendors. We'll work on deadlines, and we'll ensure that things get moved along. We support on both on the business and the personal side. Both are equally important. So on the business side, you can have an assistant plug in to your client success, to your sales team. You can have an assistant support with payroll, with HR related items. So organization, creating standard operating procedures. This is a really big one. And on the personal side, of course, you can have anything, right? Your doctor's appointments, your vet appointments, vacations, travel planning, finding schools for your kids, or finding summer activities, planning birthday parties. Like really, it's like an endless list. Whatever. It's a better question to ask, what is on your plate today that should not be on your plate? What is not inside of your zone of genius that you are doing that's stealing your time? And then all of those things you should delegate.
Right.
Okay. That is certainly interesting. Yeah. Wow. So here's a question we ask all our successful guests, and you're certainly in that category. So Valerie, in your experience with all the people you've dealt with, and obviously you've dealt with a huge range of people, is there one habit, mindset or characteristic that sets the successful ones apart from those who never become successful and remain average? And it's not all about making a lot of money. I mean success in a slightly broader sense, becoming a good leader and a good life. Is there one thing, or is it more complicated?
I love your questions. They're so good. It feels like two-part, right? One is just success overall. I read something that really resonated. We always do research on, mindset and optimization. And so this is like outside of the world of delegation, but related. People that spend the majority of their time focused on A-list items are the people that win. And those A-list items are the ones that they're the best at, that is their unique superpower. If they spend the majority of their time there, well, they're going to be a top performer, I believe. People who have been very successful at delegating have this trait, I believe. They have worked on their mindset to understand that delegation doesn't mean 100% perfection. And people who chase perfection get very slowed down in their delegation journey, and they end up giving up. People who are successful at delegating see the big picture of how much their time is worth. And they understand that even from 100 things, if only 70 go right and 30 go wrong, they don't focus on the 30. They said, this saved me 70% of time. The people who are poor delegators focus on the 1% of things that went wrong, and then they take it all back. You know what I mean? And then they're stopped from further delegating.
What a great answer.
Oh, that is a really good answer. Thank you. Yeah.
So
Excellent.
Valerie, you work with people all over the world, I take it?
So we are a US-based executive assistant company. We support entrepreneurs who are either US-based or whose businesses are in the US. So we do have some clients in Europe and in Asia, but their clientele is here and they need a US-based assistant. It is our motto that your assistant should be in the country that you are in so that culturally they can understand what's going on and that things just move faster because you have a common understanding. For example, call Verizon. I don't have to slow down and say, well, Verizon, it's a telecommunication company. And if you call the 1-800 number, you won't get through. So you should, things that just people will know by living in the country that you're in.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. And it overrides all the problems with the different versions of English, for instance, because you can hear from my accent, I'm not a long-term North American. I grew up in a very British oriented environment, so I still struggle with some of the terminology that we use here in North America. I still put petrol in my car instead of gas and things like that. And that's the same language. So now you start having people who come from totally different language backgrounds, and you've got an even bigger. That makes an awful lot of sense. It really does. Well, great, Valerie. That is very interesting. Thank you for all that information, and I'm sure that's going to be useful for a lot of our guests. So while I've still got the limelight, a quick message for our guests that. As you've seen, we've had another really good guest on the show today. And so you don't miss out on future guests, hop onto our website, theyakkingshow.com, and sign up for our newsletter. We only send you one email a week, and we tell you who's on this week and who's coming next week, and give you links so you can follow those episodes yourself. So that's it from me. Valerie, thank you once again. It's goodbye to our audience, and back to Kathleen.
Well, one last question for you, Valerie. How do people contact you?
Yes, so you can go on our website, ChatterBoss.com, and there you have an opportunity. One, you can take your delegation self-assessment. It's really cool. You can see how you rank amongst other entrepreneurs on your delegation skills. And look, delegation is a muscle. So, don't feel bad if you're a beginner entrepreneur and, you're just ranking there, but it will also give you actionable tips on how to improve. And we also are offering free delegation assessments sessions. So we can talk to you about your specific delegation gaps there. So that's exciting. That's on our website. And you can also schedule a consultation. And I like to say it's like a strategy session. Even if you are not in a place where you're ready to start today, if you do not have an assistant and you're listening to this conversation, it's your sign to at least schedule that conversation and get an understanding of what it could look like, so that when you are ready, you can take the next step.
Fantastic.
Very good.
Thank you so much, Valerie.
Let me just chime in for audio listeners. All that information will be in the description if you're only listening to this. Thanks.
Well, thank you all so very much for tuning in once again. And if anyone is interested in being a guest on our show, please visit us at theyakkingshow.com. All you need to do is click on the contacts tab, where you will find a very short application form. We'd love to hear from you. Hey, and if there are any topics that you would like us to cover, please let us know. We have access to many experts on this show, and we would love to hear from you. So until next time, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.